What's going on, everybody? Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Black Student Success Podcast, where we bring you insight and guidance from successful Black professionals, brought to you by Inquire. My name is Inquire, and I appreciate you joining me today. So we're going to get straight into it. One thing that I think is important is that we hear from the perspectives of those who have served our country, as that service may have had some type of impact and growth when it comes to their professional career. So today's guest has held multiple positions within the U.S. Air Force for over 8 years. He is also a proud member of Iota Phi Theta Fraternity Incorporated, and he also earned his bachelor's degree in corporate business from the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. So ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Emanuel Chatters to the show. What's going on, man?
Hey, how you doing, Fred? I'm excited to be on the show.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you and be able to reconnect with you in this way. So first, we always give our guests the opportunity for them to talk about themselves or really introduce themselves, in their own way outside of what I've kind of provided to them. So first question is, who is Emanuel Chatters?
Well, I'd say Emanuel Chatters is a family man first. I definitely love hanging out with my family. Immediate cousins, my wife, my kids, also my friends, my fraternity brothers. So I'd say I'm really about enjoying my friends and family. And then other than that, I would say when it comes to work, extremely focused, ambitious, and kind of really, focus on my goals that I have for myself, that I set out for myself as well as my family.
Absolutely. Well, that's really good intro there. So when it comes to the military and, when you were first kind of thinking about joining, what was going through your mind when it came to that, or what motivated you to join the military?
So I'm a third generation military brat, actually. So my grandfather was he fought in the Korean War. My dad did 27 years. He retired as a chief master sergeant. And then as well as 6 other uncles and aunts, they all did well over 20. So I came from a big military family that went beyond their initial 4 years. So I grew up in the military. I kind of knew exactly what it took, the good, the bad, the ugly. And my parents never really forced it upon me. But I ended up joining. My parents had went to D.C. for the inauguration for Obama in 2009. And my cousin had graduated from the academy. He was in D.C., stationed there at the time. My mom was like, "Hey, your cousin really enjoys the Air Force. You need to go check it out." I was like, "Oh, okay, then." Well, I went to Rotc on Monday. I met all the criteria to join. They signed me up really quick. Everything happened really fast. Then on Tuesday, as I was walking out, they signed me up. He was like, "Hey," because at the time I had dreadlocks. So "You need to cut your hair and you need to show up to PT at 6:30 on Wednesday morning." And I was kind of shocked. I was like, "Whoa, cut my hair." I was like, "It's like 2 days. I got to get a haircut tomorrow. Barbershops are closed on Monday and show up at 6:30, so I can't get it done Wednesday." And I got my hair cut Tuesday, joined on Wednesday. So my mom told me Friday to check it out, signed up Monday, cut my hair Tuesday, and Wednesday I've been in the military ever since.
Yeah, so it was really quick, especially when it came to the hair, because I had locks too, as you might have remembered. So I know when it comes to the journey of growing the hair, and then you get that memo saying that, hey, you got to cut them things off. So was that hard to grasp within that short period of time, or what was that like for you?
It's probably harder cutting my hair because, as you know, it takes a long time, a lot of commitment to get it. But since I understood, my cousin was really enjoying himself in the military. I mean, he had himself a nice car. I knew the life it afforded my family and myself. I know all my aunts and uncles were retired, so they're getting their pension at a really young age. So I knew what I was getting myself into. It was just cutting the hair, probably, because I knew I could do the military. I kind of grew up in it. But, yeah, kind of weird. But cutting my hair was the toughest. And then a few months later in ROTC, they're like, "Oh, yeah, we don't think you're going to make it." And I was like, I cut my hair for this. Like, there's no going back.
Absolutely.
I was like, if I wasn't going to join, I wouldn't have cut my hair. I was like, you're stuck with me now.
Yeah, very true. So, and I think it's good that you actually did get exposed to not only just seeing your family going through the positions within the military, but all those benefits that they had reaped and understanding what that can actually bring to you, once you actually start your own family. So that's actually really good that you had all of those things in mind before even joining. So that's good. So now when it came to actually picking which branch, and I know that you had mentioned that your mom had talked about the Air Force. Now, were you thinking about any other branches before then, or what was it about the Air Force that really drew you in compared to the other ones?
So majority of my family is Air Force as well, so I knew that. But I also knew when it comes to the Army, you're a soldier first, you're out in the field, you deploy. In 2008, we were still kind of really heavy in Iraq and Afghanistan. So the Army guys were doing like 1 year deployments on and off. The Navy, I knew I really didn't want to be on a ship. You get to see the world, but I'm like, I don't know if that ship life's for me. Didn't think about the Marines and the Air Force. I was just like, man, I know what the Air Force offers. It's as close to like a 9 to 5 you can get. And I was like, that's for me.
Absolutely.
Never even looked at them, the others.
Okay. And I like how you mentioned, that it was closest to a 9 to 5. Now, compared to the other ones, is there a little bit more unexpected, deployments or assignments and things like that compared to the Air Force?
Yes. So, for example, in the Army, they're always kind of, thankfully, but they're always kind of training for war. So even when they are home, they still go out into the field for weeks at a time and they drill. They have their exercises. They have to get qualified as a unit at their different levels. I believe they're like brigade, battalion, company. So they're always training even when they're not deployed. So I knew that, and I knew for the Air Force, depending on the job that you get, like, for example, I'm an acquisition officer. My dad was a records type guy. He like maintained all the pilots' records. So I knew he came home very often most of the time. So I knew he was always able to come to a lot of my games and stuff, like for sports, life, everything. So I knew what the Air Force could allow doing that. But I also knew if you're a pilot, you do have a chance for maintenance. Those guys deploy a lot more as well. So depending on which branch you went into or which area you went into, you could be gone a lot.
Okay. And so let's actually kind of get into that a little bit more when it comes to the different routes that you can take. So I actually took a look at the Air Force's website, and they give you 2 routes that you can take from what it looks like. You can go the enlisted process and you can go the officer process. Can you talk about the difference between the two and what they each entail?
Yes. So like a lot of my family went enlisted. So in order to enlist, you can graduate high school, you go to a recruiter, and you can go to boot camp. I think it's like 10 weeks now, 8 to 10 weeks, and then you're in the military. Relatively quick, still 8 to 10 weeks. But the officer route, if you go the traditional way, which is ROTC or going to a service academy, it is 4 years of, it's pretty grueling grind. For example, if you go to, I went to ROTC, so that's what I'll speak to more. For example, you're busy 6 out of 7 days a week for 4 years, and you're training hard. You have PT Monday morning. Tuesday is like your only day off, even though you have class on Tuesday, your military class. Wednesday morning, PT. Thursday, you have leadership lab. That's where you're actually drilling. You may see guys running around on campus in uniform on Thursday. Friday, you have an optional PT. It's more mandatory. Like you're voluntold to go. You go PT on Friday. Saturday, you have to do pre-security for the football games. After the game, you clean the stadium. Sunday, you get together with your unit again, and you prep for the next week. So it is a grind throughout college. On top of, so all that extra stuff is on top of being a regular student. So it is a little tougher because you have a little more responsibility than the average student, but it also helps because you're in a routine to kind of keep doing that stuff as well.
Yeah. You get a lot of structure when it comes to your schedule, and it sounds like you get that early on, which for a student who may not have all those other things, it might be a little bit harder because they have a lot more free time on their hands. So what was it like adjusting to having that strict schedule, and what did that look like, once you actually started getting in a rhythm of it?
So then I wasn't a traditional ROTC student because, like I said, I had dread before I joined. I joined my second semester of freshman year. no, sophomore year, second semester of my sophomore year. So I joined a year and a half into college. And I had that freedom. Like, I had been a regular student. I enjoyed myself around on campus. I was in a fraternity. But then, so when I was going through college on myself, you're kind of looking at classes. You don't really know what classes you have to take. You're kind of just floating through.
Mm-hmm.
Once I joined ROTC, you get this form where you have to fill it out and take it to your advisor, and they fill out every class that you need to graduate. In the military, like, they need to know that end goal. And then once I got that schedule, I was able to maneuver my classes around and kind of really see what it would take to graduate. And that's when I really was able to focus in, because I was like, oh man, like, here's the path. I just have to do this path and I'll be done. So that structure really tightened up. I became a better student because as the structure was there, I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. I knew exactly what I needed to do. It was my grades actually increased tremendously once I joined ROTC, because it was just, go to work out, get back on campus, prep for class, study in between, work out again. So that routine really helped me focus and get through college. Like, I think a couple semesters, I think my last calendar year from January, I doubled up in the university and the community college. I think I took like 80 credits within one calendar year, and I was just like knocking it out. It was a pretty interesting time.
Yeah, so you really had that puzzle put together for you, right? Even before you knew of what your end goal was. It's kind of nice to be able to see those different steps, as opposed to, like you said, floating and not really knowing, okay, is this the right path? Am I taking the right set of courses? Am I picking the right teachers? Things like that. So I can totally understand how the structure would, put things in place and make you tighten up as a student, and everything else just gets better over time with that in place.
Yep.
Absolutely. So now let's get into the ROTC program itself. Now, you said that it was, a 4-year program. It was really grueling because you had this structured, but what seems to be intense schedule throughout each week. But I'm sure that it had its benefits for you as a student, maybe personally, or even getting into, professionally or even academically as a student. What were some of those benefits that you reaped as as a member within that program?
So I'd say the first benefit was the class schedule. Like, seeing your class schedule, seeing the end. It's like, these are your classes. You can organize them however you want, but this is what you need. And they even had like a counter of how many credits you would need. That was amazing for me. 2, it was like you had to do like report cards. Like, you had to give your report cards, I think like 2 or 3 times a semester to the senior officer, and they would check your grades. They would make sure you were on track. If your grades weren't on par, you had to go to study hall. And even if they thought your grades weren't on par, you had to go to study hall. So they really focused on, hey, do you need help? If you do, they had other cadets that could help you and tutor you. So that was really good. And if they didn't have anyone who could tutor you, you went to this university study hall. So whatever it was doing, if your grades weren't good, you were going to study hall. And then you didn't really want to go to study hall because you had a tough schedule already. So to have to go get 5 hours a week of studying on top of everything else you're doing, you kind of focus early on. So there was a lot more accountability, because as you're floating through college, it's easy to do that. Like, your parents may not be on you for getting a C. In ROTC, you get a C, they're like, study hall. So it was really good. The accountability was important.
Absolutely. So yeah, accountability, I think, like you just said before I got to it, was the biggest thing, because like you said, yeah, it's really easy to go from having, this set schedule in high school from, whatever is 9 to 3 or whatever the time is, to going and having, class at 10, then a class at 2, and you have all this free time, and being that independent so quickly and having such big gaps can really put you to the wayside when it comes to making sure that you're on top of your work, because the work is harder and you don't really know that until you actually get into it. So, definitely that accountability portion of the ROTC program sounds like it really did you very well. So now you've gone through the program, you've done your studies, you've gotten through everything here. Now, when it came to your plans after graduation, now what did that look like, compared to a quote unquote traditional student, and you after going through this ROTC program? What did those options look like for you?
So when you become a senior going into your ROTC program, you get a dream sheet, as they call it. So based on your degree, you get and your, I guess, abilities. For example, I'm colorblind, so I was automatically disqualified becoming a pilot or any rated job. So then, for example, I had a list. I had acquisitions, logistics, intelligence, cyber, and there was one more job on there. Can't remember right now. And you rack and stack your list. And I think I had 5, maybe 6. And then I got acquisitions. It was my 5th choice. I remember specifically it was my 5th choice. I was like, oh, man, well, okay, I'm acquisitions. Then you get a dream sheet of where you want to go. And there was Warner Robins, Georgia, Wright Pat, Ohio, Los Angeles, Hanscom, which is in Boston. And then I got a no choice. Well, I wrote in there, at the time, my dad was sick. So I wanted to try to get close to Tampa. So I wrote in there, I said, hey, my dad's sick. I want to try to get close to my dad in Florida. And I got that. I got really lucky, and they sent me to Cape Canaveral. So the difference between, coming out as a traditional student was I had a career field, and I knew where I was going into my senior year. So during that time, I knew what to expect, kind of start getting smart on my job, and I knew I had a job right after school. So I would say that was the difference of going to the route of the military, early on what you'll be doing, versus I didn't have to go look for a job at all.
So you had some of those things set in place, and then you had the time to weigh those different options and then kind of put that dream sheet in, and then hopefully see kind of what that ended up looking like.
Yep.
Okay.
Sometimes it lines up. For example, it didn't line up for me. I got my 5th job, and then I got a no job, a no choice. But then in the end, it worked out beyond perfectly.
Yeah, and it sounds like that could be relatively a little bit, not I want to say easier, but less anxiety building when it comes to that whole job search. For you, it was more so just kind of putting these things in order. It would have been better if you had something a little bit higher on that list, but compared to maybe a traditional student who, they kind of look at the different companies, they have to hope that they have positions available, then they have to hope that they get those callbacks and things like that. So I can see how that would be less strenuous as far as mentally, compared to that just traditional job search. So, I think it's good that you had that option, going through that program. So now, since when you got the position, and I don't know if this was that straight path to getting to that, but when it came to working directly for the Air Force, was that dream sheet, was that pretty much what that process was like? Or did you have a separate opportunity when it came to working directly with the Air Force?
So after your senior year, you have a big ceremony, you commission. And then once you commission, you're a commissioned Air Force officer. And at that point, that's when you are in the Air Force working directly for the Air Force. And when you show up to your first assignment, mine was a Cape Canaveral Air Force Station down in Florida. That is when I was working directly for the Air Force at that time. Before an ROTC, you're kind of like a student. But once you show up to base, you're no kidding, you're an officer in the military.
Okay, nice. So, it seems pretty straightforward. It doesn't look like there was anything, beyond that. But it's good to know what that kind of looks like, especially for anybody who is considering that and hopefully looking ahead of maybe that freshman year or that time they actually join the program, to kind of see, okay, this is what I'm expecting at that endpoint, so I can do everything that I need to do for that sophomore, for that junior year, to prep for that last year, and eventually leading up to that commission.
So I would say the commission is it is when you're an ROTC going through your goals commission, you think about it daily. And I just say, if you're interested in doing it, it is worth the work. Being an officer is worth the work. It is enjoyable, but at the same time, you got to keep your eye on the prize. Various cliches that may seem, because going through college is tough. Even the greatest experience ever, people have tough times. Going through ROTC can be even tougher. You may be with people you may not like or agree with, but the thing is, you can't allow that time in your life to impact your future, because when you get on active duty, you may not ever see none of your classmates again ever. But you got to stay focused on the commission and not let the short-sightedness, or we say in the military, you can't let the suck now impact your future. So it's definitely worth it once you get there, but there's a lot of obstacles that come with it as well, like anything in life, really.
There you go. Definitely great points to make. Now, when it came to comparing your, experience within the military, let's say that, this is a few years after being commissioned. And if you're looking at the actual education that you got from school, now, how did those two impact each other? So, even like when you're in the ROTC program, how did that actual program impact your education? I know you talked about how to really straighten you out or tighten up when it came to your academics and everything, but then vice versa, how did your actual education impact, once you actually commissioned and once you were actually working in the military?
That's funny you say that, because you're going through college and you're taking some of these far off classes, calculus, some of these, you have calculus to chemistry to like world history or whatever, very, very broad base. But it's important in the military because you have no idea what you're going to do. So, for example, I went to, Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, which is also known as the Kennedy Space Center. I did business in school, but here I am working on rockets, like 6 months after. And the military will train you to do whatever. So it's important because I didn't know anything about orbital mechanics, rocketry, propulsion, satellite systems. I knew nothing about that. But having that big base of knowledge coming out of college, it allowed me to know how to study and prepare, because when I went to those courses like, Orbital Mechanics 101 or any class like that, I knew how to study to get through it, or space launch fundamentals. So having that broad base of things that you may not enjoy, but you're able to learn, really helped me when I got to some of those more complex classes.
Okay. And glad that you mentioned the foundation that you built with your education, because I know that some students are worried about getting this degree and then not using it and feel like they wasted their time. But there's all those different things outside of the classes themselves that they pick up. Like you said, you picked up how to study, and that actually helped you when it came to the training, even though it had nothing to do with what you studied in college. There are those components of what you're learning, not necessarily what you're learning, but how you're learning them. Those things outside of the actual content of the classes themselves that you can apply. And it sounds like you did that when it came to learning about rockets. When would you have thought that you were going to be doing that, within a corporate business communications program? So that's pretty cool. One thing I wanted to touch on is, and you mentioned this a little bit earlier when you figured out the different benefits that you could receive when it comes to being in the military. You mentioned the early pension, you mentioned, different allowances and things like that. Can you talk about how you've personally benefited from those different financial benefits of being in the military?
Yeah. So when you come out as an officer, your base pay may be somewhere around like 50, 60,000. And then you get your housing allowance and there are different stipends. So you come out making decent money coming out at like a 22-year-old, 23-year-old. So that allowed me to start saving early, because I was like, oh man, I'm really fortunate. Also, my mother made sure I got a financial advisor who's like one of my good friends, and his mom was a financial advisor. So I came out and it was just like, oh yeah, you have this extra money. Before you start spending it, we will take that and start saving for you. So those were some of the benefits right away. I was able to start saving really young. And then another benefit was just like the housing, the GI Bill, or no, I had a tuition assistance. So right when I got in, I started my master's immediately, and I had tuition assistance to help me pay for my master's. So I paid for a significant amount of it. So I finished my master's, I think, 18 months. I took it in person. So I got my master's done immediately. And then once I moved here to Nebraska, my family, we were able to buy a house with the VA loan. So I didn't have to put a giant down payment down, which is significant as well. So a lot of those benefits were kind of earned in the military because I had tuition assistance. I got my master's immediately, VA loan. I was able to buy a house. And then if we move here, we could rent the house, start building equity in the house there. So then we can, hopefully sell it down in the future. So it just kind of sets you up nicely just because it gives you a really solid base.
Nice. And did you have any of those benefits when you were in the ROTC program?
So in ROTC, I wasn't traditional because I didn't have a scholarship. So I was still paying my way through school. But a majority, like everyone else, had a scholarship. So they did have those more benefits than I did. You had like a stipend of maybe like $700 a month. If you're on scholarship, I think mine was like $500. But they were even better off because they weren't paying for school. They also had their stipend. So when they got out of college, they were like even further ahead because they didn't have any debt to pay back.
And then what steps would they need to take to actually get that scholarship? You said that you started during your sophomore year. Is that something that you needed to apply for before you even get to school, or is that something that you can get after you start? What does that process look like, or when should students kind of look into that to make sure that they can take advantage of it?
So ideally, you'd want to apply for an ROTC scholarship, like start looking at it your junior year of high school, and then you'll start really get it your senior year. But if you are the Air Force really values tech degrees, and as you know, I don't have a technical degree. So if I did go the technical route, I would have been able to apply for a scholarship, and I could have been awarded that my junior year. So if you have a technical degree and you're already in college, you have a higher chance of getting a scholarship. And now that the Air Force is pushing diversity and inclusion even more, it increases those chances now.
Okay.
Because when I was in, it just wasn't the focus. But now, they're just really trying to boost those numbers up. So I'm not sure if you need it as much as a technical degree, but I do know overall the Air Force is a technical force. A lot of things that we do are complicated, so it helps having that technical degree. And they show you that by, if you have that degree, they'll pay for your schooling. But if you don't, you may still be able to earn it now because I know things are a little different in the kind of environment that we're in right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm glad that you pointed that out too, especially with and I think we're seeing that more of that importance of that diversity and inclusion. And I'm glad that you pointed out that it's also happening in your field as well. So now, are there any other points that you could give to a student when it comes to considering the military or specifically the Air Force that could really help them when it comes to that whole process, whether they're, already in college or, in that sophomore or junior year and getting into that sweet spot where it's really good to start thinking about those things? Do you have any last points for that?
I'd say what a big thing about the military is working out. Like ROTC, you work out a lot. You run a lot. So if you're already kind of like in decent shape, your grades are good, and you kind of already pretty structured person by yourself, you can make it through. It's a little adjustment, but you can make it through. And as much as I love the military, I really love the Air Force. It's given me a great life. I've seen my parents and family. But the thing is, you just don't really know what you're going to get sometimes. So as much as I want to say, hey, man, you should join, I love my job. I can't promise you'll love your job because I can't promise you'll even know what your job is. So I'm an acquisition officer, pretty easygoing job. I enjoy it. Been pretty fortunate. You may join, you may be security forces, you could be missiles. Not everyone loves their jobs, every career field. So just kind of know that going in that, yeah, a lot of people may tell you, oh yeah, I'm a pilot, I love my job. But your chance of becoming a pilot, nothing is certain. So just know, kind of want to serve in the military at a broad level, be happy with most jobs. But if you come in with such a singular focus that, it's like pilot or bus and you don't get it, you're going to not be very happy. So you need to go in with an open mind because the military is going to give you whatever they're going to give you. You may not have much say. Like I said, I got a 5th choice on my job, a 0 choice on my location, and I got really lucky and fell into space. So I can't promise anyone else that path. It's just kind of worked out for me.
Nice. So good advice in terms of having an open mind. I think that can definitely apply to a lot of areas, but I'm glad that you pointed that out, especially with the uncertainty of what you'll actually get. But hopefully, if you're joining for those right reasons that are really steering your moral compass, in the right direction, then you'll be the most satisfied that you can be, no matter what that job is. Now, when it comes to just you making sure that everything is okay with everything going on, you talked about the uncertainty. You talked about, different aspects that might not be as enjoyable as others when it comes to just the work that you do. What types of things do you do to take care of yourself?
Uh, I'd say travel. Like sometimes you gotta take a break from work, travel. I really find peace like playing basketball, shooting around, being on the court, kind of just playing with my kids, hanging out, family, recharging. I'd say being with my family really gives me like the most recharge. So like my second assignment, it was really tough. I worked like mids, which is a midnight shift, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., 3 days on, 3 days off. And I worked that night shift for like 3 months, 4 months. And it was really, really tough. And I had a newborn baby. So it does get tough at times. And at that point, I was on a night schedule. We'd go to a friend's wedding. I'm just exhausted all the time. And during that time, I just kind of had to like dig deep and know it wasn't forever. Like no jobs forever at that point.
Yeah. Absolutely. Good. Well, I'm glad that you found those ways to kind of cope with, especially tough times like that. If you're assigned that graveyard shift, if you will, and you're not necessarily used to that, most people aren't, that you found those ways to kind of get through it and remind yourself that, it's temporary and, things will get better. So before we close out, I want to ask you one last question now. If you didn't have the position that you have now, or even just specifically the career the path that you went on. Now, what other career would you consider if you weren't on the path that you're currently doing?
I'd say when I was getting ready to finish up, I started seeing a lot of friends do that Target program where it's like you become like a Target GM in like 10 years, whatever the program is. I was looking into that. I thought it'd be pretty cool just to kind of have the responsibility at 30 of like being in charge of like a big store like a Target or a Walmart. I always thought that was really neat. Like having like large amounts of responsibilities always seems cool to me and to be able to walk into a Walmart and be like, oh yeah, I'm a manager of Walmart or I'm a manager of Target. I always thought that was really cool. So maybe I would have joined that program or something.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that. So thanks again for your time. This was really good. It was really good to connect and really learn more about kind of the path that you took. And I'm sure that our listeners got a lot of gems out of that. So before we do go, I just want to give you the opportunity to let people know where they can find you. Any last words that you would have for your listeners?
I'd say the military is fun. There's a new branch out there, like the United States Space Force. I was just selected across commission into that force. So I'll be leaving the Air Force, commissioning into the Space Force pretty soon. So that's really new, really technical. I mean, if you like SpaceX and you like the satellites, that's exactly what that entire force is doing. So that's really cool. But if you're interested, you can find me on LinkedIn at Emanuel Chatters. Pretty sure I'm the only one on there. Or even you can email me at Emanuel.chatters if you have Emanuel.chatters@gmail.com if you have any questions about the military. Because I know not many people know people in the military anymore. It's becoming more and more of a family business. Like 70% of the military are legacy, so like their family was already in. So if you have any questions, about anything I discussed today, feel free to reach out.
Appreciate it. And congrats on the new opportunity, and as well as thank you for your service thus far.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So thanks, Emanuel. I appreciate you joining me today. Thanks, everybody, for listening. I just want to make sure to remind you to like, comment, subscribe, and share the podcast. We're on YouTube. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and all the other small podcast streaming services in between. Make sure to visit our website at inquirehire.com. We're also all over social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. On our website, we have a lot of cool information regarding college preparation, student success, as well as personal finance. We specialize in college consulting and preparation. So if you had any questions, whether you're trying to find a school or you're trying to get through your applications, make sure you're doing the right things to put your best foot forward. Feel free to reach out. We would love to help you. But until next time, take care and peace to you.